पायरेसी कसं माहिती
Touch her, please.
Pasta?
GoPro?
YouTube Live.
يا الخمرة دي.
Uy, no, el sol, tapa el sol de arriba.
I'm going. Are you
No, no, thank you.
For Africa.
Oh?
it's just a fountain.